Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick. Coming up on the programme this week.
I was surrounded by these people who had jobs lined up afterwards, or, they'd applied for all this stuff. And I was just getting by the day to day, getting through the course. And then it kind of hit me like, what's next?
At no point when I was at university did somebody come up and go, oh, here's mental health. I just thought, oh, I can't cope in the way that other adults can cope. Other people are coping in this situation and I can't. And that's on me.
It's really exciting, actually, like the stuff that's coming out recently about how it can help reform neural pathways and kind of like link the left and right brain up, which I think is super cool.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. Howdy, welcome to the podcast. We're the home of the UK's conversation about mental health. It's Mental Health Monday. My name's Mick Coyle. Real pleasure to spend some time with you this week. It's been a real tricky week or so in regards to the cost of living, something we touched on as part of last week's podcast with the team from Money and Mental Health. And I would urge people, if you are looking at your energy bill rocketing up 54% or even more in the next sort of months, and then again in October, it can take you to a really, really difficult place. So I will urge you to head to that episode, the previous episodes of the podcast. Money and Mental Health. Connor Darcy was a brilliant guest on the programme. Going to speak to somebody this week who's got a really interesting personal story to tell. And as you'll hear when we get into the conversation, hugely echoes with my own sort of mental health journey, actually, particularly based around the final years of university. But there's an extra element to this, and it's based around flow art. Using movements, a little bit like you might get in sort of rhythm gymnastics or martial arts, to center yourself, to focus, to get into almost a meditative state, to find something that relaxes you, takes your brain to a completely different place in a way that you might get it from knitting groups, or you might get it from five-a-side football, or you might get it from a drama class. This comes with fire spinning flaming balls around your head. It's a really fascinating idea. And it's, I'll be honest, the first time we've talked about it on the podcast and as part of the programme here at Mental Health Monday, as something which can change your mindset, offer you an outlet, take you to a place and help you to sort of reconfigure and defragment your mind. So it's a really interesting thing because I'm always keen to listen to new ideas. There's also sessions involved around this if you're in and around the Liverpool City region for the Flow project, which is based at the Blackie, just in the city centre. I'll put the links to that both in the Facebook group for Mental Health Monday and at the bottom of the podcast as well. Jess Cooney is her name, and she's a really, really interesting guest. We've got all the details about how you can get involved in this particular project. I think it's going to be a cracker for some people. First and foremost, though, her own mental health journey.
Well, I guess I've always been quite an anxious person. Since I was a kid, I've kind of suffered with anxiety. I've got one of these brains that just kind of chatters all the time. So I've had some struggles before, especially when I was a teenager with like bouts of depression. And then when I went to uni, that was when things kind of got really, really real. So I did a chemistry degree, which was pretty demanding. I had like a lot of contact hours and I was struggling for money at the time as well. So I come from quite a low income background and I basically supported myself through uni. So I was working while I was studying at the same time. And I was just doing these crazy hours. Like I'd be in the lab from 9 till 5. I'd finish, I'd go home, eat something really quickly, and then go work a bar job till like 2 a.m. So I was just non-stop, basically scrambling, trying to pay my rent, trying to get by. And that's when things started to get really, really difficult and really kind of unmanageable. I kind of got into this state. I didn't realize it was happening at the time, but I'd ended up completely dissociating for months at a time. There was kind of this period where if my thoughts were going so fast that I couldn't keep up with them, and I was stuck in this place in my brain where it felt like my body was on autopilot, and I was just struggling to get by, and started really struggling with money as well, which was a big factor. I thought I was going to have to drop out at uni at one point because I wasn't making my rent, and and then I started kind of experiencing a lot of physical symptoms alongside it. So there was all this stuff going on in my body, like my stomach was a mess, like there was just this internal stuff that I realized afterwards was related to my mental health, but at the time I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I was just ill. That's why this stuff is important to me, because that's the thing that kind of got me through it.
Absolutely. You've just basically described my final year of of university. I think you put that brilliantly into words, and it sort of reflected that experience. And I almost put it down to me coming to terms with the fact that I was about to step into this big, wide open world, and there would be an expectation on me at that point to be ready for it. So what I was doing is, well, I'll just do absolutely, almost like you cram in for an exam. I'll do everything now to hope that when I do step into the big wide world, they won't see me for the shells, and that I am conning a living and pretending to be a fully matured adult when I clearly wasn't one at the time. It's such a difficult time, that, and exactly as you said, at no point when I was at university did somebody come up and go, oh, here's mental health. I just thought, oh, I can't cope in the way that other adults can cope. Other people are coping in this situation, and I can't, and that's on me.
Yeah, exactly. And you also get this like based on what you're saying as well, this like imposter syndrome, of like everyone around me seems to be coping and I'm just not. Like I'm just scrambling and struggling and freaking out because I'm trying to put all this stuff together and keep myself together. And it felt like it was like, what's wrong with me,
No, I think a lot of people have that, and there's some, the stats that are out now around mental health of students, suicidal thoughts among students is so high. And whenever I hear them, I think back to those sort of student days and that sort of mindset that I think we sort of, almost as a society, we have, don't we? Where your university is like your training into like adulthood, and there's a point where essentially that's the end of your education, and now you're into the big wide world, and you don't have some of the protections that come with being sort of a part of that university life. And there's a big shift there, which I think that people just presume you're ready for because you've gone through those other stages. But even if in your mind you feel like you're ready for them, to me it felt like there was something else in the back of my mind, the imposter syndrome or the doubts or the anxiety, which was kind of going, but you're not ready. But this isn't going exactly according to plan as how you saw it, or you've not got everything lined up in a way that you would have wanted it to. You should have started thinking about this 2 years ago or 3 years ago. You're not going to be. And that's when you suddenly think, right, I've already feel like I failed and I'm not even started.
Exactly. Yeah, that was it. I was like surrounded by these people who had jobs lined up afterwards, or they'd applied for all this stuff, and I was just getting by the day to day, getting through the course, and then it kind of hit me like, well, what's next? Like, if I'm scrambling this much just to finish it, like, and I should have the next stage already planned and prepared, and I know what I'm going into.
It's a strange one, and I think as well, if you go through like high school and college or sixth form, when you go into university, there is a pathway, isn't there? You can see that pathway opening out, and actually with a lot of that, it's not about ticking boxes because you got to do the work, but you get your GCSEs and then you get your A levels, and then you get your A levels, you go to university, and as long as you play the game, that pathway opens up towards you. And as soon as that pathway is ending, the next step becomes a little bit more like, well, who do you know? Who does your dad know? Which businesses are going to take a chance on you? How are you going to stand out on a piece of paper in a way that, colleges will have, feeder schools and all that kind of stuff? That stuff just disappears. And it's a real sort of safety blanket, which is taken away from you. And that's not, I wasn't looking necessarily for sympathy at that point, but I probably could have done with a little bit of advice that
just
feeling
some guidance.
was coming. In terms of manifesting, I'll never forget that last year of university. I had like an exam coming up in about 3 weeks' time, and I started feeling a little bit ill. And I remember I was just ill for like 3 weeks. I was just like, and I was like ill, and it felt like I was ill forever. With just like buggy symptoms and all sorts of stuff. And I was thinking, why am I still ill? And it was because I had stress and anxiety, and I wasn't eating properly, and I wasn't sleeping properly, and none of those things were happening right for me. So of course I was ill, because my body never got a chance to recover. And that's another of those things that when you feel like you're in the mixer, if you like, it's very hard to say, step out and go home for a bit. Step out, go and eat some of your mum's food for a bit. Step out and go and sleep in your own bed at home, and actually come back, take a long weekend away from you. You feel like all of those doors, or I felt like all of those doors were closed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You have to like stick to what's expected. It's like I had the same thing with my final exams. That was kind of like, was it my like third year? I think I did a 5-year degree, and it was when I hit my third year that things started to get really kind of crunchy. And I had this really bad mental health experience during this time when I had exams coming up, and I was going to doctors, and I was like, what's wrong with me? It was just months of these physical symptoms, losing weight, like not being able to sleep properly. And it was just before this set of exams that a doctor said to me, she was like, I think this is anxiety. Have you ever thought about the fact that this might be, coming from your mental state? And I was like, so insistent, like, no. Like, there's something wrong with me. Like, really, this is so physical. Like, it can't be. And I remember stepping out of the doctors, and it just kind of clicked. Like, I just realized like how fast my brain was going, like how unaware I'd been of my surroundings. Like, it was like I could smell things and hear things that I hadn't in months. And this was right before my last exams, and I thought I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't think I can do these exams. Like, everything just came crashing. And I actually did. I went home. I was like, I'm going back to my parents. Like, I know I should be focusing on revising and stuff right now, but I just need to just take a moment to process what's going on and understand what's happening to me. And I remember I messaged one of my lecturers, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to make this exam. And he's like, please just do it. Like, if you fail it, like, there's stuff we can do, but if you don't go, it's difficult. And I went on, hadn't done any revision. I'd been at home. I just got the train back up. I was like, I'm just going to do this exam and walk out. And luckily I managed to pass it, so it was fine. But yeah, you also have to stick to the structures that are there, and there's not that time to take time for yourself, take time out when there's deadlines. And I had lab reports I had to do every week, and there just wasn't space for it. So yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Well, I'm hugely impressed, because like I say, that was the end of my third year for me, and that was the end of my degree. But for you to sort of then sort of regroup and sort of get back on your feet for that final 2 years is a huge credit to you. Often when people talk about the mental health journey that they've been on so far, they talk about that moment or that thing where they suddenly thought, oh, actually, I quite like this, or this seems to work for me. And this brings us on to the wider conversation we're going to have. What was your thing? What was that moment where you suddenly thought, oh, maybe there's something else that interests me, that ignites my brain a little bit?
Yeah. So that for me was fire spinning. That's what I found. So I'd had this experience, and I really needed to try and come back to my body. Like, I just had this big disconnect between brain and body that had been going on for months. And when I realized, I was like, okay, what can I do about this? I went on medication for a bit, which kind of calmed me down a bit, but just I felt a bit numb. And I was trying yoga, I was trying meditation. And I remember the first time I tried meditation, I was sat there and they did this kind of like body scan thing. And just this like kind of pushing my energy into my body, or feeling that it was there after it had been so foreign for me for so long, like made me nauseous. Like, I felt sick. Like, I couldn't connect. And I was trying. And then, I ended up meeting these people. So I was in Edinburgh at the time, and there's a massive fire spinning community there. So I met these people just one day. I'd met a friend who slacklined, if you know, it's like balancing on rope between trees. And he brought me down. He was like, come on, try it out. And I was like super anxious at the time. I nearly chickened out of this social interaction because I was like, no, I'm not up for it. And I turned my bike around at the last minute and was like, no, I'm going to do it. And when I was there, I met these people. And they asked me, they were like, oh, are you coming to the fire later on? And I'm like, what's the fire? Like, I have no idea what the fire is. And so they brought me along, and there's this, it's a meeting that happens in Edinburgh weekly as well, also on Mondays, which is, you know, very great. Where, yeah, people come, they spin fire. So yeah, I guess for people who don't know, it's,
I was going to say, when you're saying spinning fire,
spin fire.
just tell us what's happening there.
So that involves basically like props or fire toys with wicks that you dip in paraffin, and then you set them on fire, and then you essentially dance with it and move with it. And so I went, and the first thing I tried out was set a poi. So poi is like weights on the end of. I have this is my poi I practice with here.
So that looks like you've got two old school tights with a tennis ball at the bottom.
Juggling balls, just
they're juggling balls.
Yeah, but yeah, essentially just a weight on the end of a tether that you can like swing around and play with. And so somebody handed me a set of fire poi, and yeah, and I just moved with them. I just got engrossed in this thing, this flaming weight I was holding, and just moving with it and dancing with it. And it kind of was like, it was like the first time my brain had gone quiet in I don't know how long. And then that was it. I was just kind of hooked. So I was going every week, and there's this guy who runs the club up there, and he makes loads of props and brings them along, so just anyone can try it out. And he, you know, he keeps an eye on like safety and stuff, make sure everyone's in safe clothes and not doing any like crazy hitting each other or anything like that. So yeah, I just go along every week, and I'd set something on fire and I'd just dance with it, and it became kind of like movement meditation, I guess. I
was going to say, because you obviously tried the yoga and the meditation thing, but actually, I guess in terms of the mindset, the same rules kind of apply to a certain extent, except you've got that different element to it, which is the movement, also the danger, I'm guessing, potentially that's related to it as well, that it's about taking your brain to somewhere that allows it to free itself, or to start thinking about things or contextualize things a little bit different. And it's interesting that the yoga, which some people might think that's perfect for me, or the meditation, where they'll go, thank God I found it. For you, it didn't work, but actually you didn't then stop looking. You carried on. Next thing you know, you're spinning fire around your head. And you go, this was the thing I was looking for. This was the thing I needed in my life.
Exactly, yeah, because I think it's just, I think the thing that didn't work for me initially with yoga, and I do a lot of yoga now, like this has kind of opened me up to yoga practice and to meditation, and it's taken a while, but that's something that also works for me now. But starting out, I think the linearity of it, like the kind of structure of it, was just something that didn't work for me, whereas fire spinning, as it initially was so, it felt so non-linear, it felt so kind of creative and explorative. Like I didn't have to conform to a set thing, or, you know, put myself in a place. It was, I could just move, and I could just move how my body moved, and I could move with this prop, with this thing I was holding. And that was kind of what got me in this state of focus, of calm, of
and as you were doing that, were the people around you aware of what you'd kind of been through, or were there then conversations about maybe why other people sort of took such great enjoyment from it? I mean, did it open up a conversation about mental health, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I guess eventually. So I had a bit of a funny journey because I was also like struggling with my mental health, and I get a lot of kind of social anxiety, or just this feeling that I'm not wanted, or I don't fit in, or just feeling like a bit of an alien. So I had a bit of a back and forth with it, where I'd go quite a few times and then I'd be like, oh no, this is not the place for me. These people are too good for me. And I'd kind of dip out. And so it took a bit of a process, but eventually I built up this community, these people. And yeah, there's a lot of stories. Like, you hear people's different stories about what it's done for them. And yeah, there's this kind of, like, the community of people who I found through it are just the greatest, most open, inclusive people, who all have their own reasons and their own stories and their own way that it's helped them. So yeah, I'd say that kind of not really like initially kind of like focused mental health conversations, but it's something that has built as an ongoing part of this process and part of my journey, I guess. Is yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, I don't necessarily know the science of it, but is there something, you know, is there evidence that shows that something like this sort of tackles things like depression, anxiety? I'm guessing it does, because it fits into that sort of distraction technique, but also centering and various other things as well. It ticks a lot of those boxes, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So there's tons of research about like the flow state itself. So that's kind of a term from this positive psychology. There's a psychologist, I can't pronounce his name, it's Hungarian. I wish I could pronounce it, but I'm not going to try. But he kind of coined this idea of the flow state as being this state of complete immersion in what you're doing, and this like effortless being completely absorbed. It's kind of like being in the zone state that people feel. And so there's like tons of research about this, but it mainly relates to sport or to art. Like, it's a state that's found quite a lot in like musicians, artists, dancers, and also sports people. And yeah, there's there's loads of new research. It's really exciting, actually. Like, there's stuff that's coming out recently about how it can help reform neural pathways and kind of like link the left and right brain up, which I think is super cool. And there's a lot of stuff where people are developing games that can induce flow state, and they're using that to treat depression, to treat brain trauma, also to prevent Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, things like this. And so the thing about well, I got into through fire spinning, but the kind of bracket term is flow arts. So that involves the non-flaming stuff. And yeah, so the thing about that is, I think it provides this kind of easy pathway to accessing this state that is usually only seen in these kind of high level artists or sports people. Because like there is a skill to it, but there's also this like creative exploration element. So that's the kind of, all the research on it is around this flow state, which flow arts is I think,
you know what, you could have just said, Mick, you know what, I just enjoy it and people enjoy it, and that's good enough. But no, I like the fact that we've got the scientific backup for it as well. I think it's interesting as well. I was listening to, I think it was a documentary about when sort of humankind first developed fire. And the sort of, you know, when people become obsessed by looking at a bonfire, or like just staring into the remnants of like a barbecue at the end of a night, or maybe that's just me, but it was based around, they were talking about in terms of the evolution of sort of humankind as well, that up until the fire, that it was basically you were one of the animals. But as soon as you created fire, you could create warm spaces and safe spaces. You could sit people around in a cave looking at fire, and you didn't have to go to bed because it was dark. You could sit, and at that point, you could then tell stories. And that was when you got this culture of self-reflection and art and all those things that came from fire, which I thought was one of the aspects. But it's interesting to hear that, you know, the flow arts happen without the fire as well. Let's talk about the sessions now. The Flow project, which is up and running. You've done a couple of these already at the Blackie, which is a brilliant space, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large space as well. If
it is
spinning things around your head. There's plenty of height in that in that building in Liverpool City Centre. Just tell us about the Flow project. I think you've had a couple of these up and running already.
Yeah, we have. So we've done 2 sessions so far. So yeah, we're running these indoor sessions at the Blackie, which are free, open, accessible. We basically just bring a load of flow toys. So there's tons of different stuff. I know I mentioned poi, but there's also like rope dart, staff, levitation sticks. We have some people who juggle, all kinds of stuff that we bring along. And there's this really, like, we've created this real community ethos of sharing. So there's people who have different skills in different things, and you can kind of, go up to people, ask them how to do stuff. There's space to just explore on your own, like if you want to just play with something and see how it works. And then at the end, we have like a little thing where we bring LED toys and we switch the lights off and we just play some music and just let people dance also. So our kind of like our 3 kind of key messages with it is play, learn, dance. So encouraging this like explorative playfulness that I think we forget that we need quite often as adults. And then also with emphasizing the kind of like skill development or this learning process, which is another thing I think, like a lot of people, they think school and academia and this kind of educational journey is like where learning ends. And I think it's really important to keep the mind healthy, to keep learning, to keep taking on new stuff, exploring new things. Like this playfulness and this learning journey that we forget about.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. It's been mentioned on the podcast before, actually, and I found it really interesting because I've got children of my own, and that the play learning state, which is now like the big sort of emphasis, particularly in sort of early years, that you learn through play. And whether it's through self-shame, embarrassment, or society, it gets knocked out of you, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. To stop doing, like my daughter will like come up to like my brother's, one of her uncles, and she'll, hey, watch this. And then she'll do like a big jump and a spin. And it's like, yeah, fine. Like, but what she's doing there, she's sort of trying to establish herself like through an achievement or an action and things like that. And you think that's great, but she will grow out of that. But it's interesting to hear so many sort of positive things that are happening in mental health are actually tapping into that play state. Again, the bit where you go, it doesn't, if you heard a busker in the street and you actually just started dancing, like that would be really positive, both for you and for him. But we have these sort of things around us that kind of go, oh, you're too old for that though now, or that's a bit childish, or you shouldn't be, or why are you doing that? It was actually to step away from that and then to find that again and to see that it benefits you and the people around you. I think is a really good life skill to learn, but also one that we need to sort of keep learning and keep remembering as well, that you can dance, you can enjoy yourself, you can have those sort of play learning moments. And you don't have to think that people think I look silly, or do I think that people will think that I look silly? And actually in reality, they're just thinking, I wish I had the confidence to do that.
Exactly, that's it. Yeah. And like the setup that we've got is that place to rediscover your confidence with it, or discover if it was never there. And I think that the main benefit of kind of object manipulation or using these props that to move with is that it kind of takes the focus away from the self. So where you can become really self-conscious, you have this physical thing, this object to focus on, rather than, the kind of scarier medium of your own body and what it's doing. You can focus on what this prop is doing. And yeah, that's kind of, it's awesome to see people just kind of lose themselves in it, because it's, I don't know, there's no pressure to look cool or be cool or act your age, it's,
Exactly.
space, play.
You mentioned the LED, so that's like lights. Is that in place of the fire? Is that like an insurance thing, or is that like a slightly different version of it?
Yeah, that's because the blackie won't let us spin fire inside.
Sorry, go on. What I was going to say, because in terms of that, sometimes you see these, so when outdoor events, and Liverpool's famous for them, that actually this might be something. And actually, I think people have seen these in these sorts of events in Scotland. The big, I'm thinking the big giant. What do you call that? What's the big
Beltane Fire Festival.
Yeah, where you see all that and you think, wow, that looks absolutely amazing. But actually, it strikes me there's a little community there that's building that might be able to, introduce these sorts of elements into sort of future carnival spaces and all that as well. And it would be great to sort of see people moving from the Flow project onto something like that and to build something as well. Just tell us about, in terms of the people you're focusing on, people from low income backgrounds, but high stress backgrounds as well. That's might be very, very wide mix of people within just those two categories.
Yes, yeah. I guess that's kind of like, that's my personal motivation with it. Just because I grew up in this high stress, low income community, and I saw the health impacts of the lifestyle on the people around me. There was like people dying in their 50s and 60s, and I grew up thinking, 60 is the life expectancy. Like, we're not getting further than that, and just seeing how this impacts people. And so that's kind of my motivation. That's why I was studying science also initially. Was I kind of wanted to approach this from a scientific point of view, but finding this, my life trajectory has gone a little bit skew with, and I'm definitely still interested in science and in the science of it, but this just feels like a much more practical way to access the people that need it. And yeah, so with the Flow project, like at the moment, it's just kind of these open sessions. We're running on donation basis also, so we have like a fundraiser going, but we're going to look for kind of more sustainable source of funding with the aim to do targeted projects on different groups that we think would benefit the most from this.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah. If people are thinking, go on then, go and watch. Let me stand on the sideline, which I imagine what a lot of people do before anyone drags me into the middle of it, and I decide, are people able to come down? When are the sessions? And how can people find out more information?
So if it's more of a kind of just watching from the sidelines thing, then we do run fire sessions once a month in Sefton Park at the Boating Lake. So our next one's on the 23rd of April. That would be a kind of observer. But our sessions, our indoor kind of flow sessions, they happen on a Monday at the Blackie between 7 and 9. And yeah, I mean, it has been most a participation thing, but there is space to just, like, there's no social expectation for you to mingle with people or have to chat with people. Like, there's enough space that you can just pick something up and go off in a corner and just play on your own if you want to. And I think that's really important, because the kind of everybody's progression journey and everybody's approach to it, like, there's so many people I know who've got to different points in different ways. It's such a kind of individual process. And like for me, like now I do performance stuff, but that's a very new thing. And the first time I did anything in front of people, I absolutely freaked out at the thought of being observed. But I'd been spinning for like 2 years. But it was always such a like personal, individual thing where I could just go into this like meditative state and I could pretend there was nobody around me, nobody's watching me, and just be in my own little world. And so I think that this space that we've created leaves room for whatever you want from it, or whatever is beneficial for you to take from it, so whether that is like working with the aim to be able to spin fire or be able to do performance, like the space for that, whether it's just to connect with people and share things and chat, there's space for that. Like whether you just want to go play on your own. Also, yeah. And the Blackie room is huge, so.
Brilliant stuff. Well, we'll make sure we put some connections to the Facebook group in the write-up for the podcast as well, and we'll get some links on the social media too, so people can hopefully find those connections and make those links. Come down and see you. It's a brilliant idea. For 240 odd episodes of the podcast so far, you're the first fire spinner.
Yeah.
In terms of something that puts you in a different place. So we're always looking for new ideas. So maybe an inspiration for anyone else who's going, never mind your pottery classes and your baking and your five-a-side football, I'm doing X, Y, or Z. Then yeah, absolutely. Let's be hearing from you as well. Jess, thank you so much for your time. The Flow project is up and running now, and it's open for people to come down and see, but it just sounds like an absolutely brilliant idea. Jess Cooney, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really nice chat.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.